Barbarians in recent weeks have become all the rage. Pun intended. GameMasters here, and the Barbarian class is trending like crazy right now. You know, that Dungeons & Dragons class that taps into rage and uses reckless attacks to give themselves advantage in combat. One of the most famous barbarians is, of course, Conan the Barbarian. And while he does not originate from Dungeons & Dragons, the image of Arnold swinging a sword or bashing his fist and knocking a camel silly, or straight up just using brute strength to rip a horn out of a summoned god's head, presents pretty much the exact visual inspiration as to what all a barbarian in D&D can actually do. Barbarians can make full use of weapons of opportunity. That is, they can pick up a rock or a stick or even a discarded sword or axe, or even use their own helmet, whatever they can find, and use their rage to provide to them advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. When you make a melee weapon attack using strength, you gain a bonus to the damage roll that increases as you gain levels. And as a barbarian, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Why did I mention weapons of opportunity? Well, because of rage, you can pretty much max out the damage from any given makeshift weapon. Of course, that should not be a substitute for your primary weapon, which really should be an axe. More on that in a moment. But come on, removing your helmet and using it to smash an enemy's face, that's just fun. Also take note that strength plays as your primary stat, so you'll want to get that as high as possible. Barbarians can be pretty much any race, especially now with how racial traits are distributed. Adding 2 to one stat and 1 to a second stat, or adding 1 to 3 different stats. Although there might be a few races that just wouldn't work with being a barbarian. First thing that comes to mind are the 2 new playable races from Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the Fairy and the Harengon. Although there are many different subclasses out there and homebrew subclasses for barbarians that could incorporate one of those races. And I'm going to get to one of my favorite homebrewed barbarian subclasses in a bit, and I'm going to ask for you to later in the video comment below on your favorite barbarian subclass. But first, other abilities barbarians get, and this can all be found in the player's handbook, but you get reckless attack. This gives you advantage on melee weapon attack rolls using strength. The downside is that attack rolls made against you have advantage until your next turn. You also get danger sense. You gain advantage on dexterity saving throws against effects that you can see. You also can improve your ability scores at levels 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19, allowing you to increase one ability score by 2 or 2 ability scores by 1. At 5th level, you gain an extra attack. The abilities go on and on. Those are just a few, and as mentioned, this can all be found in the player's handbook. Listen, barbarians have had a history, and in my opinion, a wrong history, of being the class to play if you are just beginning to play Dungeons & Dragons. It's been said that they offer zero thinking to play style. I say otherwise. Playing as a barbarian puts you into a place of being super creative. You may have the power and damage to walk up to something and wallop it, but you won't survive long doing that to every critter or monster you run across. Before we explore some of the finer details that don't appear as being overtly obvious in the player's handbook, I'd love to ask that if you're enjoying this video, please wallop that like button. It really helps me to get these videos out to other people. And if you are so inclined, feel free to subscribe. Thanks. As mentioned a couple of times, strength is the primary stat for a barbarian. Your attack and damage all revolves around that. To go along with strength, seek out things that will give you boost to strength. Feats, Great Weapon Master and Savage Attacker are 2 that come to mind that will amplify your damage output. And always be on the lookout for items that will also provide strength boosts. Constitution is also a great stat, as is Dexterity. Constitution will help add to your overall hit points, and keep in mind that the Barbarian is the only class that gets a D12 for hit die, while Dexterity will help with things like dodge, climbing, swimming, as well as your armor class. As for weapons, and I told you we'd get back to this, you can pick pretty much anything. However, Most players will hone in on axes because of their damage. A great axe might be even better, especially if you took that great weapon master feat. Axes are the favorite mainly because of the damage output. Listen, a simple hand axe is going to do 1d6 slashing damage. A battle axe is going to do 1d8 slashing damage, and a great axe is going to do a whopping 1d12 slashing damage. Of course, there are also magical axes out there that are only going to increase damage, and provide other special abilities as well. Barbarians will serve two primary roles for the party, either being the tank because they can absorb damage well due to their overall hit points, or they can dish out massive damage. And keep in mind, as you gain levels, you're eventually going to be doing both. Where barbarians really shine are in the various subclasses, called primal paths for barbs, as they can allow you to really hone in on dishing out damage, or taking it. The Player's Handbook offers up two: Path of the Berserker and Path of the Totem Warrior. Path of the Berserker is your, that's going to be the Conan the Barbarian. And this path, actually let me sum up. The subclasses really could be an hour-long video per subclass, so yeah, let me sum up. Path of the Berserker. The benefit is you can Hulk out like the Incredible Hulk, increasing your damage dealt. The downside is you get exhausted and have to rest to recover. Path of the Totem Warrior. The benefit, similar to a druid, you pick an animal and gain abilities of similar power. The downside, there's lots of choices and many are very specifically situational. Other paths can be found in other books. For example, Xanathar's Guide to Everything has Path of the Storm Herald. The benefit, similar to Totem Warrior, you pick an environment, desert, sea, tundra, and gain power associated with that landscape. The downside, it's also pretty specifically situational. Also found in Xanathar, Path of the Ancestral Guardian. The benefit, this subclass really focuses on the defense and the ability to absorb and take damage. The downside, to make this subclass really work, you need to allocate your stats to be defensive as opposed to dishing out damage. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything also provides some primal paths for the Barbarian. Path of the Beast. The benefit, it's a good balance between taking damage and dishing it out. The downside, honestly, I've not exactly found a major downside on this one. There is also Path of Wild Magic. Yep, this one allows barbarians to cast magic. Don't get too excited. The benefit is when you play, that is the game itself, will become increasingly more chaotic as you will be rolling on a wild magic table a lot. The downside, total chaos is going to ensue because the magic you do cast is all, wild magic, as the name of the subclass implies. I think you can easily see that the Barbarian is much more than a simple class for beginning players. While it certainly can be, it is also a very viable class for advanced and experienced players as well, and is among my more favorite classes to play. Oh, and of course, there are many homebrewed subclasses to pick from. Many can be found across the internet and on DM's Guild. Just be sure to talk to your DM just to make sure that the build is suitable for their campaign. Now, one of my favorite subclasses is from Matt Houston called Path of the Contagious Fury, and I did a video detailing that build, which you can check out here. What are your thoughts about the Barbarian? Does it sound like a fun class to play? Have you played as one and was it fun? What is your favorite subclass and why? Let me know in the comments below, and until next our paths cross, may you not rage to the point of exhaustion.